Hello everybody. I'm your boss, Joe Boss, and welcome to another daily plan. This time, it's a week ahead trade plan. We got some stuff going on next week. We have a lot of PMI data coming out, and we also have the Bank of Canada. You actually will be able to go over the calendar for next week here. I got trading economics open. A lot of stuff you can see. Here's the Chinese PMIs as well. And then here's all the final PMIs out of all the European countries. Here's PMIs out of the US, the final ones. A lot of the services indices are coming out with stuff. A couple of speeches. So Barr's doing 2 speeches, is that correct? We got some Australian economic data coming out. Their GDP, right? Let's see here. What else? Where is... there we go. There's the Bank of Canada. European retail sales. Jolts. Powell testifies. A bunch of EIA stuff. So maybe crude moves on this. Some China trade info. And yeah, so here's on Thursday. Yep, initial jobless claims on Thursday. All right, some home spending stuff in Japan. We'll get a little bit of insight into demand in Japan. PPI in Germany. And on Friday, employment data in the Euro area, employment data in Canada, employment data in the US, and then inflation in China. So Friday's going to be pretty important day. But in the meantime, leading up into it, looks like we got the PMIs across the world, and we have a bunch of economic data depending on what country you're looking at. So let's head back to these charts. All right, we're all good. So yesterday we did the month ahead trade plans because yesterday was the last trading day of the month. And you can see here on DXY and a bunch of the other assets that we checked out, specifically the G7 US dollar FX pairs, commodities, equity indices, so ES and Q, gold, oil, and then Bitcoin. We did some month ahead expectations, some general expectations. And as we go into the stream today, I have a feeling that our expectations short term might not totally align with these monthly expectations. But again, that's the whole point of setting expectations. You have to update them over time. Expectations change as you get new bits of information, and over the horizon, you're looking at it. So for next week, let's go ahead and take all the information that we got into account here. Let's go ahead and start off with the probability pivots. Wow. So this tells us the likelihood, given the last 16 years of data, where we're likely to close. I want to load a bit more data into this, so I'm going to manually have this thing load weekly data here. Yeah, you can see a lot of closes around here, a bit around here. So this is the range that I'm looking to find our close next week. I could probably draw that a bit better, something like this. Again, the odds increase in this area here, so nominally the close for next week occurs around this area in the upper half of the 103 handle. And then you kind of have a bit of a spread, about 30% of your closes in this area right here in the upper half or the lower half of the 104 handle. Okay. Let's go ahead and set our nominal expectation then. We find the close somewhere around here next week. Now let's go ahead and look at our high data. A lot of highs come in pretty close to the open right off the bat. That's like a little over 60% of the time the top for next week comes in below 104.25. Go ahead, label that one green. No, wrong one. Label that one green for bullish. So somewhere around there, maybe we end up going up first a tad and then lower, considering that low would probably end us with a red week. Yeah. So something along these lines would be my nominal expectation. Set that one to red. And you can see that's quite different than the expectation we set on the month, right? Okay. I guess it depends on the net trend, because this, for the last 3 weeks, has been drifting a bit lower. We'll see. Overall, for the last few months, it's been doing pretty darn well. So we'll see if this is now the pivot here. Just readjust the screen so it's easy for you guys to see. All right, let's go to a 12-hour and load up our ranges. And that does line up with our ranges. You got a peak here for where a lot of highs occur, and a peak right here. And if we load up our closing odds, it seems like we might need to adjust it just a wee bit higher. Go ahead and double check our closing odds, the seasonal odds here. Yeah, maybe there's a bit more of a hug around above, somewhere between 104 and 103.7 for where the close is next week. So I am pretty content with that as the expectation here. However, I am open to the idea of actually going down first and then up and then closing at a higher spot up here, to be frank. Yeah, and I just noticed if you look at this from last week, I think when I was drawing this angle here, I specifically noted, hey, when you're right here in between the spot, there's kind of a coin flip scenario where either you're getting your close up here or you're getting your close down here. And it looks like we got the more volatile move down here. You can see these candles are starting to look a bit bigger than the candles over here or the candles over here. So the size of the candle seems to be increasing. Well, let's go ahead and timestamp these things. We're now in March, so we can do 2024. 0301. All right. This does make a bit of sense here. I want to check out USD CAD next. A lot of your closes around here over the last 21 years. Some closes here, you got one close way up there. But most of your closes are looking favorable for the Canadian dollar here. Let's go ahead. I don't know, with the Bank of Canada coming out, it really depends on how hawkish they end up. Yeah. I don't know. I'd be willing to set more of a nominal expectation here for our closing odd. Let's go ahead and look at our lows. Actually, let's look at our highs first. Wow, a lot of highs around here. And if we overlap our distribution, it says like, hey, going up here ain't totally out of the question. But I'm not that terribly bearish over the next week here for the Canadian dollar, or that particular bullish for the US dollar here. So I'll go ahead and set a more nominal expectation like this. And then we can do green. Timestamp that. So something along these lines here. Go ahead, check out our low odds. Yeah, a lot of lows come in right off the bat, but you have this spot here. It's like 28.5-ish%. Lows are in this area right here. Let's go ahead and check out our low odds here. Well, a lot of lows come in right off the bat too, and then you got this spot right here. Yeah, when you do move down here, you're finding your close down here a lot. So time to be careful for risk on potential moves here on the Canadian based off what I'm seeing here. We want to text of the arrow for our timestamps. Yeah, nominally, I would set my expectation down here, but with Bank of Canada coming out, if they are more hawkish, I probably would expect a move that's a bit more significant that takes you below 1035. I don't know. With the Fed coming up, I'm not that bearish on the US dollar either right now. It really does depend if we get a more hawkish surprise out of the Bank of Canada or not. So I'll go with the nominal expectation there, and then come BOJ, we can always react and update our expectations from there. All right, let's go ahead and look at our closing odds one more time. Again, this is all BOJ hawkish surprise closes, so you can see the skew. Hey, BOJ doesn't really surprise or change our future expectations much. It keeps you hugging around this spot here. And then I would say, depending on the degree of hawkishness you get, you can extrapolate maybe where the close is likely to be. So I'd say a moderate hawkish change. So they push out their first rate cut expectation out one or two more meetings. That would probably get you firmly below 135. And again, we're just looking at the odds here for now. And as we get outlooks and review expectations for the BOJ, we can go ahead at the beginning of next week's stream, go ahead and set new expectations with new timestamps. Okay, so that is the US dollar CAD. Let's go to Euro dollar. Euro dollar rallying into the close. Pretty volatile move compared to the last week or so outside of these two candles here. It's like you have lulls and then spikes a lot. At least the volatility is lower here compared to over here. And this looks fairly bullish, in my opinion. You can see, these are your more bearish scenarios, and even in the more bearish scenarios, most of the time next week, the close is above 108. So I see more upside skew here for the next week. Let's go ahead and check out our likely lows each. Those are some pretty fat odds there. What does our distribution look like? Well, a lot of lows come in right around that spot there, and then there's room for overshoot on maybe a weaker than realized final PMI. So let's start with that at the beginning of the week, and then let's check out our high odds. Yeah, and then up. I think that is a pretty good expectation for where the high is. But I'm realizing the order of these lows and highs could be mismatched here, because if this leads into more green into the first of next week, you're going to end up reaching your high first and then potentially reaching your low or getting some outperformance up to here on particularly good PMIs. And that's actually not totally out of the question, right? Again, 20-ish, 28-ish% of tops next week coming around 109. So 109 not out of the question next week. And if we our PMIs real quick for Europe, we can actually figure out. So consensus is higher there in Spain, higher there in Italy, higher here in France, higher here in France, higher in Germany. Composite is expected to come in a bit lower, but services expected to come in fine. And overall net, the expectation for the euro area is expected to come in higher. Still in contracting territory, but an improvement. It's just, is that enough reason to send euro dollar to 109? Not so sure. Because a lot of it has to do with their inflation. But it looks pretty good for Europe next week. Especially on the closing side of things, right? Some closes up here, some closes back down here. Well, we can set a more nominal expectation for appreciation going into the PMIs. And then maybe the PMIs don't come in as expected and you end up going lower. But again, if the final PMIs actually come in slightly better than expected, there is upside, very, very clear upside risks that I'm seeing here on the euro. Check out those highs around here. Yeah, so above 108.7, I'd start to get concerned about more upside heading to the 109 spot. All right, but for now, let's go with the nominal expectation here. Probably something along these lines, like that, for the close. Yep. Okay, that looks good to me. It would essentially be a continuation of this range from the prior week with a slight positive drift. Again, depends on how well those PMIs hold up and if they accelerate past the preliminary PMIs we got before. Yeah. 109, not out of the question here. Okay, let's go ahead and check out Great British Pound. Pound also recovering into the end of week. Nice to see. Let's go ahead and check out our closing odds here. Again, some closes up here, some closes down here. Pound still ain't doing so hot, and you can even see historically it usually does not do so hot. So we're going to go ahead and set a bearish closing expectation here for next week, nominally around this spot. Let's go ahead and check out the low odds first. Eesh. A lot of lows around this spot here. It's like 100 pips lower. I am kind of curious. Do we have, what are some major releases here? I mean, we have PMIs here. The previous, so the PMIs are expected to essentially come in flat. And the forecast for the composite is for it to increase slightly. So they got global manufacturing coming out. They have a speech, retail sales. Apparently retail sales are expected to tick a bit higher. New cars. Also expected to, wow, double from the previous number. Let's see here. Anything else on Wednesday? Global construction PMI expected to rise as well. Housing prices expected to fall a bit. Mortgage rates expected to stay the same. And that seems like that's about it for next week on the pound. It actually looks fairly decent next week, so I'll go ahead and set a more conservative low expectation for the pound next week. Go ahead and set this one to red for our bearish expectation. And what about our high? Wow, a lot of highs come in right off the bat here, so let's go ahead and do something along these lines where it's up, down, and then probably have to readjust this closing expectation a bit. Each. It does not look good on the odds for closing super favorably unless you get some sort of snap. Yeah, it doesn't look great. The economic data looks moderately okay at first glance there. But again, as we get new information, we can update our expectations. Yeah, I would only see us closing in this spot up here unless we started to see some more closes that are around. I mean, what upside move is potentially 80 pips next week. It's had a nice little positive drift over the last month or so, but it has just been holding up so far. Essentially, it'd be trading back at these spots around here next week if the economic data comes out fair for the UK. Real quick, check out the highs. Yeah, that seems okay. Yeah, again, this is not so hot on the closing data here. Really not that favorable for a bullish close next week on the pound. Well, we'll leave the expectations like this, and then we'll go into the next asset here. Aussie. Aussie also picking up some speed into the close. Looking good. Looking good. And those lows are essentially a guess. Oh, find your low here or here or here. Relatively similar odds. And on the high side, wow, pretty decent. It's like close to 40% of the time the top next week is around here. And then you have some tail there on especially good Australian economic information. But based on what I know, I wouldn't expect too many surprises, positive surprises for the Australian. Go ahead and set up our low odds here. All right. This would be my nominal expectation going into next week here. So this would be down again. And now let's figure out our closing odd. Yeah, this looks super flat. I mean, you have quite a strong weighting of closes in this positive spot up here. And then they spread out and are fairly uniform below that. Yeah, not the best in the world, but I'll go ahead and just set a nominal expectation for slight rebound into the end of the week. All right, let's see how that holds up. And now let's do New Zealand. New Zealand did not get as significant of a pop into the end of the week, and I saw a lot of people trying to buy these lows. I mean, I even took a shot, but I was super early on it. All right, let's go ahead and check out first our closing odds here. Looks like a lot of closes are in fairly positive territory compared to the open of where we'll be next week. And some upside surprise potential here. So it looks like New Zealand has some pretty good odds of ending the week higher. And you can even see here in the distribution a lot of closes around this spot. So we'll leave that as a placeholder for now. And then we'll go ahead and check out our high odds here. Not so favorable on the high side. I don't know, if it does move up, I would expect a move up to around here. But it's even more likely just get your top around here. And in particularly great situations, you would expect, I mean, close to 140 pip move, but I don't know what would cause that sort of move over the next week here. Let's see here. Do I not have New Zealand here as one of the countries selected? Yeah, there we go. We have to add New Zealand. So let's see here. Import-export prices, global dairy, manufacturing. Manufacturing is expected to improve, but from a decreasing position still. And that's next week, so not so many great bits of information over the next week for New Zealand. So I'll go ahead and stay nominal with my high expectation there. meaning I'm probably going to have to update this closing expectation a little bit there. Let's go ahead and check out our lows. Yeah, a lot of lows around this spot here and that spot there. Probably a new lower low on New Zealand for next week there. And we can go ahead and double check our closes now. Yeah, it's either here or a snapback like that. Yeesh. But you do see there's some closes around there. You do have a peak in your distribution there, and you do have this here. So I'm going to have to set this as expectation, given this sort of expectation, frankly, of not reaching a higher high next week. Again, I'd like to be surprised to the upside for risk on positions, but it doesn't seem all that terribly likely. Now, the New Zealand currency could do pretty okay. We're expected to see a bit more appreciation, but again, going into, I would expect that to be post-March FOMC, that trend begins to occur, where you see more risk-off post-March FOMC. So, range-bound, slightly risk-off bias. You know, I think the risk-on expectations for a lot of these currencies is maybe coming in just a tad too early. So let's do US dollar yen. Well, it looks like the yen also recovered into the end of the week. And the closes are pretty consensus for next week around this spot here. So we'll go ahead and lock that in and figure out our X for a likely low first. Yeah, probably just a tad lower. Let's go ahead and bring up our distribution. Yeah, so somewhere likely around here. Set that to red as the expectation right off the bat for the week. Yeah, and then our high expectation. Yeah, a lot of tops come in around there, so probably a move up to around here. Call it 151. And then a drift lower into the close. Set that to green. And that is USDM for next week. All right. Let's move on to equities. Let's do NQ first. NQ really beating expectations into the close. Wow, that is great. Up 1.4% at the close. Probably not that crazy more of upside left. Yeah, maybe a bit more. You tap and cross into the 18,500 handle. And then from there, let's go ahead and figure out our low. Wow, a lot of lows really concentrated around there. what would cause that sort of that? That looks particularly volatile. Who knows? Maybe these lines should be flipped down and then up, and then it looks a lot more impressive for the bulls. Real quick, want to check out this? Yeah, that would be really a really big move there. I don't know, let's say a little bit more conservative, so around there. Okay, let's look at our closing odds. And it looks like either most of the closes stay just a tad bullish, or you got quite a skew to the downside. So something along this lines would be my nominal expectation for close, maybe just a tad higher there. That would be my expectation for the NQ. Let's go ahead and do ES. ES also moved higher, and that definitely met our expectation going into the close for this week here. Oh. Reload the indicators. Yeah, you can see right around here. It's like, yeah, probably a bit more bullish. So that was nailed. That's nice to see. And it's more consistently closing bullish by what I'm looking at here. If we look at next week's odds, yeah, it all seems to be lining up. So that would be my closing expectation, unless something particularly bad happens, and then it's a guess, but it's a guess in the 100-point range between 5,000 and 5,100. And that's not, the nominal expectation there based on these odds. So we'll not do that. Let's go ahead and look at our low odds here. Yep. I would say I would like to see a down move first, to be frank, for the S&P at the beginning of the week here. But then if we check out NQ real quick, because usually these things are moving in tandem, having the up move here first also, it's like, it's a bit different setting a down expectation. So let's go with up actually, but yeah, that spot still seems quite likely to me. Yeah, that is interesting. I'm gonna look at the high odds first before plotting some stuff down here. Oh yeah, now I see why. A lot of tops come in really close, like right off the bat here. Okay. So bullish bat, and then, man, that would be another spike. Yeesh. I'm gonna look at those closing odds one more time. That'd be quite a recovery on the closing side of things. Just loading up the closing odds here. Yeah, it could be a bit more conservative on those closing odds here, something like that. It would be a fairly more neutral week off that, with still some room for outperformance above this expectation, but we'll go with that given this information here. All right. Bearish expectation there. Let's go with something along these lines there. Okay. And that is that for the ES. Let's go ahead and do crude. Crude really exceeded expectations from where we expected it to close. It just still closed in the most likely spot. 23% of the time, oil closes in this range here. I was just expecting it to be a bit more controlled there. Yeah, risk on popped into the end of the week, so you know, if you didn't have that risk on pop, expectation would have been met. But you know, when new information comes out, the market reacts. Yeah, a lot of closes around here and right here. So I'd say this is your more neutral bearish close. That's definitively your more bullish close up there. And then this here is your bearish closing spots here. So let's go ahead, check out our probabilities here. Yeah, we can go ahead and set our nominal expectation for a close somewhere around there. Set that to blue. Go ahead. Let's look at our high odds first. Yeah, that seems pretty likely that we get a slight continuation of the highs around here. It'd probably be like that. It'll probably be quite a bit higher. Oh, check that. It also lines up with our distribution there. Sweet. Set that to green. Check out our low odds now. And they're actually not that crazy so long you're not going past the $77 mark. So something along this line. It's essentially finding support at the $78 mark next week on oil. And again, this is the sort of week where I could very easily flip these two things around, this green and this red line, on a lot of these charts. Because very, very easily, something could happen over the weekend where expectations for one of the economic events occurring earlier in the week, call it Thursday, not Thursday, Monday or Tuesday, could give you a bearish move right off the bat. You hit a likely low right off the start of the week and then move to a high. So these two lines could very easily get flipped around. And that frankly goes for a lot of the charts that I'm drawing expectations on this week. So you could end up with something totally reversed. Okay, let's go with Bitcoin now. And we can't really use this indicator here because we only have 13 years worth of data. But in the last 13 years, it says close to 70% of the time your low for next week is somewhere around here. So, you know what? We can still give it a shot. But this week is still not closed on Bitcoin. Bitcoin still has the next 3 trading days until this settles in. So these ranges, these pivots and these ranges can still move quite a bit. Yeah, and considering the crazy volatility and all the people who are hopping on the Bitcoin now saying, oh, you know, there's all these risks of, you know, going to what is 900,000 is the last one that I saw. And I'm like, yeah, guys, you guys, I know Bitcoin just went up 10 grand in the last week. But now you're drinking the Kool-Aid if you're thinking we're going to 900,000 anytime soon. Like, the miners are going to absolutely just dump on you if that's the case. That would be actually a fantastic shorting opportunity. Bitcoin goes to 900,000 next week. It's going to be the biggest, fattest top wick ever. Oh, man. So I'll just leave this expectation from yesterday as is. And let's check out ETH. Ethereum still climbing higher. It's only got 8 historical samples, but can't really use it all too much. Let's actually check out the highs there real quick. Yeah, a lot of highs come in right off the bat, and the other set of highs come in, well, around the 3,700 handle. So I wouldn't put 3,800 out of the question, to be frank. Yeah, man. Definitely got to be careful with crypto during times like this and saying, oh, I want to short it now. Because for all of February, shorting was the wrong move. Parabolic moves like this will ruin you. Just straight out. And everyone talks about it. Let's see, is there any other asset that I should have covered here? Oh, Nvidia's up 4% today. Let's check that out. Wow. Nvidia. Beating my expectation of a close around here, but then again, that was earnings, and it's just rip roaring teared. Like, this is crazy. Did hit the likely high spot though over the last 15 years of data we got for it. And that is your peak on your high distribution. That is your peak on your low distribution there. We can check it out for next week too. Why not? A lot of highs are a bit more conservative, but right at the open, you're already dealing with pretty tail high odds there. So, 80.50 probably goes up to 80.50 next week. I'll go ahead and just plop that in there and leave it like that. And let's see how likely it is we hit 80.50 next week. Okay, so that was all the week ahead expectations that I wanted to do and wanted to cover. I'll go ahead and say thank you all for watching, and anyone who's in the trading group who has access to these indicators and the one-on-ones with me can show up tomorrow at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern for another event for people in the trading group in Discord, where we cover outlooks and do a review of outlooks for the week ahead. And maybe we end up changing some of these expectations. Again, probably the most critical thing is some of these expectations might want to be adjusted to bearish off the bat and then bullish later on in the week. So a lot of these expectations could easily get flipped around for bullish bearish move, but the targets, the expected prices, those would be my nominal expectations for where the high or the low is for the week. It's just the order of do you hit the high or the low first is kind of in question here. All right, with that all said, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in a bit.